And on that note, without further ado, I would like to invite President Museveni, who is not new to this forum. President Museveni, last year you were so inspiring when we held that session at the New York Stock Exchange, and we want to welcome you back. And we also hope that your hand gets cured very quickly so you can sign and write a check for us as well. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. The organizers of the meeting and the Excellency Sarif, Right Honorable Prime Minister of Ethiopia, His Excellency the President of Malawi, and all the, I'm told there are rich people in the audience. I'm emphasizing rich people because I don't want to talk to poor people. Because I've got enough poor people in Uganda, I don't have to waste time talking to another batch of exotic poor people. Now, here I'm talking about common interest. We are talking about prosperity. How can we enhance prosperity in the world so that you are more prosperous, if you are prosperous already, and we are also prosperous. Prosperity through production of goods and services. There you need two players. Player number one, the producer of a good or a service. Player number two, the consumer of the good or the service. If you have those two, you are going to get prosperity. If I produce wealth, I produce a good or a service, and nobody buys, I will not continue. My business will be in trouble. And I think you people in the West, you have seen this repeatedly. It happened in 1929 when the system got into problems, and it has been happening again and again. When there is a lot of production, but there is little consumption, the system gets into trouble. But the two people, the producer and the consumer, need to be linked by another person. This is the person who develops the infrastructure. Because I am point A, you are at point B, there is no road to link us, or airline, or ship, we cannot be linked. So the consumer and the producer need to be linked by that third person, the developer of the infrastructure. I am trying to simplify because I have been active in these things for the last 50 years, and I know all these conferences. You can spend a lot of time talking and get little out of it. So I try to really go to the basics so that we don't have to waste time. So therefore, when you apply these three yardsticks, consumer, producer, infrastructure, to Africa, you will see that Africa is the continent of the future. and of the present, as far as prosperity of the whole world, not only of Africa, is concerned. Recently, when China was getting out of poverty and becoming a middle income and a big economy, it stimulated the economy of the whole world. The price of steel went up, the price of cement went up, the price of copper went up. Why? Because new buyers from China, new consumers, were entering the market. Now, the consumption in China seems to be going down, understandably. Why? Because if you build a railway line and you use steel and you use cement to build it, you cannot do it every year. You do it once every 50 years. So then what happens after that? You have already built it, it is in place, you can't build it again. So the demand goes down. Now it is Africa to help, help ourselves, but also help the world economy. The population in Africa is now one problem of Africa has been a small population. I have been seeing groups which come to stop women from having children, but I've been discouraging them in Uganda because our problem was not overpopulation, but rather underpopulation. Africa is 12 times the size of India in land area. However, the population of Africa, even today, is slightly smaller than the one of India. So therefore, population is not the big problem of Africa. But that's another subject. The good thing is that the population of Africa is now coming up. It is 1.2 billion now, and it will be 2.5 billion by 2050. And the Africans are waking up to the bottlenecks that have been keeping them behind. One of the speakers said the economies of Africa have been growing at a high rates of growth. Yes, it's true, 6% and so on. In spite of the bottlenecks, those economies have been growing in spite of lack of electricity, in spite of inadequate infrastructure for transport, but they have been growing. Now, the Africans have identified those bottlenecks: lack of electricity, high transport costs, inefficiency in business regulation, and so on. Once they are solved, the economies in Africa will grow at double digits. So therefore, when we are here, no, but before I conclude that part, I must also bring up one point. The relationship between the consumer and the buyer cannot be sustainable if A produces and B only buys. The sustainable relationship is for A to produce and B also to produce, so that you exchange your products and services. Therefore, if there are people here with money, that's why I insist on talking to people of money. If you don't have money, please, you should have told me not to come, because I no longer want to waste my time. The Africans would develop one way or the other, but it is faster if you people who already have money can come now. It's good for you, it's good for us. Therefore, it is important that you come and invest in these sectors in Africa: agriculture, especially processing, industry, services, ICT. As far as Uganda is concerned, those are the 4 crucial sectors, including infrastructure: agriculture, industry, services, ICT, and infrastructure. When you do that, you produce goods and services in Uganda, adding to whatever we are doing now. But in so doing, you also create jobs. And when you create jobs, you enhance the purchasing power of the Africans, of the Ugandans in this case. When the Ugandans have got enhanced purchasing power, they will buy more of your goods and also more of the goods within Uganda. So therefore, what Africa needs, what Uganda needs, let me talk about Uganda, is entrepreneurs. An entrepreneur is somebody who has got spectacles to see opportunity. That's what we call an entrepreneur. And has also got money to implement to take advantage of the opportunity he has seen. We also want tourists, these people who come to see the beauties of Uganda. But we also want trade. So those 3 words: investors, tourists, and trade. With these few words, since we are many, I thank you very much, and I hope I've already been assured that that 80% of the people here are rich. They are not bureaucrats. They are not just talkers. They are people with money. Muito obrigado.
Mr. President, thank you very much for your encouraging and enlightening remarks. A little known fact is that when the President took office in Uganda, inflation was literally what is called hyperinflation at that time. And today the economy is booming, communication infrastructure is in place. It's improved 100-fold actually, but a lot more can be done, and with the benefit of partners around the room, hopefully that can be achieved.
The issue of economic integration in Africa. As I told you, Africa is very huge, and as all the speakers were saying, 30 million square kilometers of land, 1.2 billion people now, 2.5 billion in the next 40 years. But because of colonialism, Africa had been fragmented into 54 different countries. That's how we got independence. Fortunately, our leaders in 1980, they realized this and held a conference in Lagos, Nigeria. And they worked out what they called the Lagos Plan of Action. The plan of action was to integrate these 54 countries into one market, but starting with what they called the regional blocks: East, West, South, North. So what, what Her Excellency Sharif was telling you was on the ECOWAS, the one you were asking about, of West Africa.
Oh, you.
But there is also COMESA, Common Market of Eastern, Southern, and Central Africa, the one in the East. That one caters for 400 million people on that side of the East. And then there is SADC in the South. And then the East African Community in the Mid-East of Africa. We are now working on what we call the tripartite. That is COMESA, East African Community, and SADC, Southern Africa, to make them one, and eventually have the whole continent as one market. So this is very crucial for you to understand, because we had to solve this problem. Because remember what I said in my introduction, was that the lifeblood of business is selling. If you produce and you sell more and you expand. So we had to solve this problem within Africa. And as His Excellency said, we have not ended there. As far as the market is concerned, we have also negotiated with our friends here in the United States, and we told them that, please, instead of telling us about aid, you tell us about trade. You open your market to us. Fortunately, President Clinton and later President Bush and President Obama, they opened their market to us here. So there is a trade arrangement called AGOA, African Growth and Opportunity Act, where you can export 6,500 products to the US, tax-free, quota-free, if you produce something in Africa. We have also got a similar arrangement with China. I think China, they have allowed us now 440 products, although they said they will open more. Even India, they talked, they didn't implement, but at least they talked about the same. Even Japan. So the point is that when you invest in any of these African countries, you do not only have the market of that individual country, you have the market of the region, eventually the market of the whole of Africa, but also the market of our partners, our trade partners in the world. I thought I should add to what Her Excellency was saying.
Thank you. Thank you, President Museveni, for the very good clarity. I know we are very tight for time. And my good friend, partner and supporter of this effort, Barbara Samuels, had a question. I also want to thank Yvonne Bending-Rothschild, who's the Executive Director of the European American Chamber of Commerce. Yvonne, thank you for what you do. And I'm going to invite you to figure out how, through your network, we can create more investment opportunities for Africa. So I leave that thought for you. There's no rush. Tomorrow morning is fine.
There is a young lady there who is dying with a question.
Yes. Yeah, please ask. Yes. And whilst they're going to the mic, I want to thank Mariela Pogashnik, who's the Director for Advisory Services at PwC, for being with us. PricewaterhouseCoopers is one of the largest accounting firms, and we count on you to help promote Africa as well. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, President Museveni, for recognizing me to ask this question. My name is Donna Sims-Wilson, and I'm president of a firm called Smith Graham & Company, an African-American-owned investment management firm with $6 billion in assets under management. And I was privileged this morning to speak on a panel earlier invited here by Hubert Danso and the wonderful team at AI. And we were talking about women's empowerment. And I would just like to expand that conversation into the diaspora. And so my question is, how are you working with the diaspora of your respective countries to stimulate investments in your countries? Of course, recent immigrants to all over the world, and especially the United States, are prolific, but I'm speaking more specifically of ancient immigrants to the United States, primarily African Americans, who never before in the history of the United States are in positions of power to do business and to invest in a mutually beneficial way, from the President of the United States to heads of major corporations, and more specifically to this audience, African Americans who head up pension boards that are making private equity investments. For example, the New York State Common Retirement Fund, the head of that, the chief investment officer, is an African American woman, and her deputy, who's sitting right here, they've announced that they're going to invest 3% of their $160 billion in assets in Africa. There are other African American heads of pension boards in the room today. So the question again is, how are you working with and mobilizing the current and ancient diaspora to stimulate investment in your respective countries? Thank you.
Yeah, you see the issue of waking up in Western Europe. There was the Roman Empire, which was a civilized world. It collapsed around 450 AD. It collapsed, was taken over by barbarians. Then there was 1,000 years of the Dark Ages in Europe. And then around 1400, the Renaissance started, the rebirth of knowledge and civilization. Even then, it took them many years to know what to do. Some people were saying this, others were saying that. And it was not until about 1776, or after almost 300 years of the Renaissance, when one of the thinkers called Adam Smith was able to give some guidance as how things can move. So similarly with Africa, there's been a lot of ideological meandering. This one is saying this, that one is saying that, the donor agency is saying this, the World Bank saying that. So there's been a little bit of lost time. For instance, the growth you hear, the high rate of growth, as I said in my remarks, has been happening in spite of certain bottlenecks. Bottlenecks, no electricity, no transport network, as you heard people saying. But fortunately, these bottlenecks are now realized. Number one, there must be enough electricity. So we are all investing in electricity. Many of us are investing in electricity. Transport, we are working on the roads and the railways. So therefore, this is the time to tap all that potential, like the diaspora you're talking about. The African Americans who came long ago, and the Africans who have come more recently. So in the case of Uganda, we have created a desk in the President's office, in Foreign Affairs, and also in the Uganda Investment Authority to link up with the diaspora, both old and new, so that we take advantage of that capital which you have, of the entrepreneurship you have, but also having on our side created a more favorable atmosphere for your investments. cheap electricity, lower transport costs, less bureaucracy in licensing, and so on. I thank you very much. And I would like to be in touch with you. My office here, my people here should be in touch with you. There is this ambassador, I don't know whether you have ever seen her. No, you go and talk to her, don't just say Washington. Go and talk to her now. Don't say Washington, because...
How about Kampala, sir? We all want to go to Kampala.
But you're most welcome to Kampala, but she will look for her here.
Okay.
I thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Doing business in Africa, you can't afford to be without Africa Investor.